So I'm Janelle Klosky. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have two boys, two little boys. They're 7 and 10, and I live in Holland, Michigan. Uh, yeah, I definitely started to feel symptoms. Uh, my memory of it goes back to when I was 16. I think my mom would have has kind of a different experience with that. I started menstruating when I was 12, and she says that I always had symptoms the whole time, but I don't remember them being so problematic until I was maybe 15, but definitely 16. Um, we were just recently talking about it. So she had all these memories that I didn't. I'm like, wow, that's I can't believe how much of that you remember. But she was a mother watching her daughter suffer, so it makes sense. Yeah, so I the pain was ever present. So yeah, that was the symptom, is just ongoing pain, especially with menstruation, but it seemed to be sort of all the time. And it took it was just creeping into every facet of my life. I was missing um I was missing classes, especially in the afternoon. I don't know. I was in orchestra and I loved orchestra. I never wanted to miss anything, but I remember having to miss orchestra too much, more than I wanted to. Um, so in and out of doctors, seeing gynecologists and urologists and even GI specialists, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Finally, I did end up. I hear these stories of women, struggling to just get a diagnosis, it taking years to get that diagnosis. But my diagnosis came pretty early. So and this was all in the mid 90s too, like mid to late 90s, which is crazy to say. But yeah, so I had a couple of laparoscopic procedures to remove lesions, and I had nobody ever said PCOS to me, but I did have ovarian cysts kind of chronically and throughout that whole period as well. Um, so just lots of lots of pain, and it affected the kind of job I could have. It affected the kind of sports I could participate in. Um, when I became sexually active, it affected my experience with that. And yeah, and you know, I wish that of course, like I wish I knew then what I know now. It's, hindsight is 2020, but I suffered for a really long time. In my memory, it stands out from about 16, 15, 16 to into my, well into college. I think I was starting grad school when I was 22-ish, 23, and I was, like, just completely fed up with this constant nagging thing that I was carrying around with me all the time, and it was just, like, always affecting what I do and how I feel, um, and I started to kind of try to just explore what I could do on my own, because being on birth control, I started with the depot shot when I was 16. And then, that was awful. And so I got one of those shots and that was it. And then I started on the pill, and, uh, so the birth control, I don't know, I was still struggling all the time, so it didn't help per se. Um, but by the time I was 22, I was like, I have to figure something out. This is just nobody's helping me." And I was in this phase of life where I was, like, focused and ready to learn and just absorbing everything I could. Um, and I remember having this really interesting conversation with one of my friends, who I didn't see very often, but I was, kind of venting to her, and she was like, "What kind of menstruation products do you use?" And I was like, "I don't know. I mean, whatever, Tampax, whatever, um, whatever's on the shelf, maybe on sale, at the pharmacy." So she was like, "Maybe you should consider this, the Diva cup. It's a silicone cup." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Anything. I will do anything." So I got I think the one and only silicone menstruation cup that was on the market at the time, and started using it, while I was also simultaneously transforming my diet. I mean, I was completely broke. I was in college, taking care of myself, funding everything that I was doing, and, I was like, "I have to eat healthier. I've gotta, like, kinda turn these things around." So, um, I started cooking a lot and learning more about food and really cleaning up my diet, and changing my menstruation products kind of all at the same time. It had a profound impact on my symptoms, truly. And this, after years of, you know, I it was so frustrating, like, it being a healthy, otherwise, really active person, like, having to sit down, 2 hours into my work shift, and because I was in so much pain, or just, like, not being able to stand upright for long periods of time. The pain becomes nauseating and exhausting, you're tired, and pain is tiring, and it really weighs on your spirit. So, I started seeing a gynecologist when I was 16, and those details are kind of muddled because I remember 2 different gynecologists, but, uh, I got f I explained the symptoms. I did not know what endometriosis was. I didn't know it existed at all. I was just in pain. So, um, going to see my gynecologist, and, there were pelvic exams, and I was started on the depot shot, but not a lot of there wasn't any clear explanation at that point, for sure. Um, I think I didn't officially get the diagnosis until I was probably, oh gosh, I did at some point, I think in '99, so I must have been, like, 17 when I had a laparoscopic, just exploratory procedure, and that was when they were like, "Oh, yeah, you've got, you have endometriosis, there are lesions everywhere." So, they removed what they could in that procedure, and removed some, cysts as well, but I also was having cysts, like, burst periodically, unexpectedly, and that was terrible. Um I think when I was 17, I actually got the diagnosis in '99, and the pain persisted because they can't always know exactly where all those lesions are. They're hiding all over the place. So the pain continued after that. Um, and I had another procedure when I was 19, so in 2001. I had a total of 2. And but all this time, that whole time, knowing what it was, but not really knowing exactly what to do about it. At the time, I was living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, on University of Michigan campus, so everything was very expensive. I was trying to, uh, survive on go to school and working a job or 2, and I was spending so much money on my food, like going literally to Whole Foods and joining the food co-op, learning about vegetables, and eating more fruits, and learning how to prepare vegetables, and I was really loving it. I was reducing meat too, but there were kind of various reasons for that. Um, I just kind of got into it. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a creative outlet for me, and it was fun because I had, um, my boyfriend, who's my husband now. We cooked together, and I would cook with my roommates, and we'd all have dinners, and it was really lovely. So it was just a nice way to connect and to explore, these beautiful foods that were delicious and interesting. And I had not been exposed to cooking or food like that before. So I just really enjoyed it. And I remember I would spend I'd spend like my entire like one of my entire paychecks on, like, go to Whole Foods, and just it was that was the priority. So that's what I did. I started using the Diva cup, and that was, like, in the midst of this kind of, like, food transition, and, it there were profound changes in me after 3 cycles. I remember, feeling tremendously better just because of that. So, and it was, yeah, those products were difficult to find. I was having a very hard time finding them. Sometimes I didn't wanna use the cup and I wanted just like an organic pad or an organic tampon or something, and that was hard to find, and expensive too. So health is expensive, it turns out. Um, you know, so it was the day-to-day intensity that I was experiencing that was really dramatically reduced. The periods always, like, going through for a long time after that, the first day was always pretty terrible. It was still I was having abnormal, very routine, regular. I was a, 27, 28-day cycle always, which was really great. My cycles were totally, normal in that way, um, but extremely painful the day before and then the day of. It was that kind of thing where, you're laid up in bed with a heating pad and ibuprofen kind of thing, and you might miss school, you might miss work. That was still happening until, um, like, well into my after I until I was probably almost 30. And that then I started, I think I got pregnant when I was 31 with my first child. And that's another thing. Like, I think you and I mentioned that my doctors as a teenager were telling me to become have my babies early because I was destined for a hysterectomy. And that was just, that really had a deep impact on me. One, that I didn't have any intention of being a young mom. I had a lot of plans for myself, and I wasn't going to, you know, I wasn't going to kind of change that path. I was going to take my chances with whatever came when I was ready to be a parent. Um, but leading up to that, I was kind of mentally and emotionally preparing myself for a journey, a hard road, um, thinking that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant. I mean, I have this group of close, amazing friends that I've grown up with, and literally, and they were not just joking with me. They were literally offering to be my surrogate to carry my child for me. Two of them. And they were 100% serious. These were the things that were going through my head for a long time. Um, but when the time came, and my husband and I were starting to think about what this would look like, and you know, I'm like, am I healthy? Is he healthy? Like, what do we have going on here? But long story short, I had zero trouble getting pregnant ever. So the trouble was keeping a pregnancy. So I had four pregnancies total. I had a baby, and then two losses, and then my second baby. So two losses in between them. Um, and I know that, with certain diagnoses and pelvic health issues and um, hormonal balances going on, that can mean that you can have trouble carrying, maintaining a pregnancy, and which was the case for me. But I did have two healthy, beautiful children in the midst of it all. And miscarriage is very common and not discussed very much. So, I think it's improving and getting better. Those conversations are happening more and more. Well, what I wish is that doctors wouldn't say things like that to their patients. I, it was really damaging. Um, I Looking back in my experience, I know that everybody was kind of doing their best with the information that they had. Maybe I'd like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Um, I don't know. I mean, looking back, if I was wishing things were different, I would wish that there was a little bit more insight into, the multitude of factors that could be coming into play that were causing this problem in the first place. Like, why is this happening to so many young girls and teenagers and young women? That is it is not acceptable to say, "Oh, this is just part of being a woman. This is normal. Lots of women have this stuff going on." Like, this is not normal at all. Um, and when things are going on with a young woman's and a young teenager's cycle, and she's experiencing severe debilitating pain, that is far from okay. So I wish there was more of a sense of urgency to just kind of globally, more of a sense of urgency to figure out what the heck is going on, you know, with the whole thing. Um, and I think back when this was going on with me at the beginning, there was so little known about endo. It's a the everybody was just kind of like trying to figure it out, but it's the scope of the medical model is so narrow, and they're just like, trying to fix those symptoms, just mask those symptoms and not dig deep and get to the root. And that's what has driven me since then, is that I am not willing to take a pill and cover up what's happening in my body and not figure out what is wrong and why. So that's, I guess, in that way, I am grateful because it sent me on a path that has made me what I am today. I mean, this was just the beginning of my journey with feminine health. Absolutely. When I think about how like my when my true interest in women's health came about, I might say when I became a mother and going through my pregnancy and delivery and recovery. I don't even like go as far back as this, but when I really, when somebody asks these questions and takes the time to um and I'm allowed the time to really kind of process it and go through it in this way, it really did start back then. Um and I'm kind of the eternal optimist. I know that doctors are they have the medical world, they have, I guess, some good intentions, but they are not really meant to solve all these problems exactly. Um, I think that every individual person, man, woman, whatever, has a wisdom inside of them that knows what is happening and why and how to help themselves. And that voice and that wisdom is squashed with this big this hierarchy of health that we kind of are like, oh, you're the doctor, you said so, and I'm gonna just ignore my instincts and my inner self. And I have a little resentment about that. I'd like to um I think we're moving away from it. I hope. And I am, at least I've and with the work that I do, all I want is to empower. Well, I've turned toward women because of all the multitude of impactful experiences I've had through my life so far, to really lift women up and trust them, tell them that they are correct and that they know, and get the help that they think that they need. Take what they find to be helpful and leave the rest. It's okay to dig deep and look at the whole picture and trust yourself for what's right for you. Um, and that doctors are not going to have all the answers for you. Certainly they want to, but they don't. They absolutely don't. If you have a heart attack or a stroke or a broken leg, doctors are fantastic for that. But when it comes to your intimate health and your body systems, especially your this vital this vital sign within our bodies, our cycles, our menstruation, our womanhood, our feminism, our feminine, uh, it's ours and it's unique to us. So it's important to listen and trust it.